did you grow all these skills, all these abilities, all this potential that you already embedded in yourself? How did you grow by starting from the very early age where you realize that, wow, here I am now. What do I do to still be the real me?
Well, for me, starting at an early age, as I tell people, just to give context, I was born in 1977, was adopted from Mexico City here into the United States in Dallas, Texas. It was a very different time then. Racial tensions are much higher. When my parents introduced me to their friends as a baby, 5-year-old baby, half their guests got up and left in protest because it was interracial adoption. They were offended. So that just gives a context of the world that I was raised in the southern part of the United States. Now, what that's done for me is from early on, I had this very unusual juxtaposition, being brought up in great privilege, having access to education, having access to opportunities that finances could provide. On the other hand, being a different race and hobnobbing with the powerful, I was always very much outside of it in a certain extent. But what that also taught me is I had to work extra hard, because then that meant I wasn't, and it wasn't fair, but it was the truth. It was, well, when I'm somewhere, I was often the first brown person that a number of institutions dealt with. And so I realized how I behaved, what I achieved, unfortunately or fortunately, set a bar and a standard for how other people measured other people who were brown skinned. So that was just a reality that I grew up with from the time I was probably about 4 years old. I became aware of that. Add to that, growing up, my mom, she was bipolar. She had a lot of issues, and she could be physically and emotionally abusive. And I remember very, very young, as a little girl, sitting on a playground, and my mom had been very physically violent earlier that morning. And I looked over and I saw this little squirrel, and part of me wanted to go and grab that squirrel and bash it. And then I went, whoa, I don't want to be that. And it was just this moment of clarity going, no, I'm not going to be that. And that's obviously stuck with me for years as I grew older. And then the second real defining moment, I have a hearing loss. So I'm such a fan of Zoom because I read people's lips and it helps me more than phones do. But, growing up, I was in a very accelerated school. And so they didn't do anything extra to help people with disabilities. It was either make it or you break it. And I was very frustrated. And my father took me to a park. And there was this huge tree, and there were all these acorns everywhere. And he picked up an acorn and he showed it to me, and he said, see this acorn? This turned into that tree. And as a little kid, I'm like, wow. I mean, that just blew my mind. That little thing could become the tree. And he said, it becomes that tree because it spends its life trying to reach the sun, and it will never reach the sun. But in the process of trying to reach the sun, it becomes this huge tree. And then he said to me, you have a choice. You can either go to a school for those who are hearing impaired and will help deal with those particular challenges, or you can stay where you're at. The other place is going to be easier and less stressful. If you stay where you're at, you're going to probably never make straight A's. You will probably struggle all the way through. You'll probably continue. People that say kids are sweet don't remember their childhood. They turn up my hearing aids all the way up and say, hey. But, he said, you probably have a lot easier time, but you're not going to learn as much. So which one are you going to do? And at the time that he gave this to me, I was about 4 or 5, and there's something about it that told me I was deciding a life philosophy. It was more than what school. It was like, who am I? And my parents gave me that choice every year. And every year, all the way to the 12th grade, of course, I had the racial issues. By then I was dealing with my seizures, migraines that would lay me out for 5 days straight, going up in the dark. But all that stuff, I kept going, who am I? Every choice tells me who I am. And so as I grew older, I realized compassion and empathy are a large part that tell us who we are. Am I going to react with anger at this person right away? Or am I going to step back and go, why is he or she saying what she's saying? Let me understand it, not because I agree with it, but because that helps me build a bridge of conversation that leads to action.